Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. Offgridmontana.com. Rich Scheben's with us. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vincent Finelli. How's everything going with you this morning?
Very well. You know, I looked at a weather forecast that Joey sent us, Joey in Michigan. 16 days of rain pummeling us. And I'm thinking about this. Hey, pretty soon it's not going to be hay. It's going to be like wood. And I don't think the cows are going to like it, but there's not much we can do about it. We can't.
Send some up.
We are not in charge. Yeah. We're not in charge of making the weather here at our farm. I mean, we've got people that we pay way too much money to do that, and they've decided that we need to be flooded. No kidding. Seriously, that's where we are. So, Rich Scheben, you've got a lot for us, and you're going to talk about some of the things that you've done research on and share that with us. I'm going to sit back and relax.
Well, I'm going to ask for your
maybe
feedback.
Not.
What I'm going to do today is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clumps of articles. And when I say clumps, they are articles that are politically incorrect. They're articles that show how the elite, the aristocracy, the globalists / Democrats are distracting, dumbing down, and dividing the American people, mostly through group identity politics. And I think we'll get plenty of talking points from this. I usually do articles every time I'm on the air, but not to this extent. And they're probably 2 days to 2 weeks old. So some of you might have read some of these already, but I think it's a good radio strategy, if you will, to do something a little different and help wake up the people, because I know a lot of people don't have time to go on alternative media and look at some of this information for themselves, and they get so inundated with the propaganda, lies, false flags, and hoaxes that come from the mainstream media, we don't get truth anymore. So without any further ado, Vince, I'm going to mention the first clump. If I had to get too technical with my terms, let me know, of articles. First one is fake anti-gay. This is New York City Records. Fake records records show another fake anti-gay crime in New York City. Next article. One man's quest to expose a fake BBC video about Syria. Next article. New York City education officials were demoted for being white. By the way, I'm not making any of this stuff up. This is the stuff that's happening today, folks. Next article. Brother calls, and I can never pronounce his name, Justin Buttigieg. Who knows what it is? He's Mayor Pete, and he basically, his brother or brother-in-law came out publicly and said that he made up the story about lying about his family for political game. Next article. Disney and Netflix threaten Georgia boycott but continue to work in countries where abortion is illegal. I'm sure most of you have read that article. So basically what they're saying is that they're going to boycott the state of Georgia because of the abortion law that was passed, but yet they're all over the country, all over the world, pardon me, working in countries where abortion is illegal. So this is why, Vince, I hate the double standards, the hypocrisy, the scams, the fake news, and this is one of the reasons why we need practice what you preach laws, and I've gone over that in great detail over the years, but I don't see anybody from either side, Republican, Democrat, willing to go forward with this, and that's because there is a lot less left-right paradigm and a lot more aristocracy controlling and managing the serfs. So when you hear all this rhetoric like, oh, it's all the whites' fault, the white people, they did it, oh, especially white males, but yet nobody on, especially the left, ever calls for the confiscation of assets and money from the family of the Bezos, from the Bloomberg family, from the Zuckerberg family, from the Zucker family, from the Rothschild or the Rockefeller or the Soros or the Buffett family. How come all these white males get a pass, where all these super wealthy people who own the mainstream media and all the big corporations that sanction every message from the mainstream media, which goes downhill, nobody on the Democrat side ever has the courage and the guts to say, well, let's confiscate all the money and assets from these white males. But no, they don't. What they want to do is keep everybody down, and that includes everybody. Doesn't matter if they're black, doesn't matter if they're female, doesn't matter if they're homosexual, transgender. They want to have everybody fighting against everybody, and they want to blame everything on the poor/middle class white male. But when they talk about white males and how it's all the white males' fault, they never talk about the confiscation of the hundreds, if not thousands, of gazillionaires who run the show. And so this is why we need the practice what you preach laws, Vince, because double standards and hypocrisy, I think people are tired of hearing these words. So, Vince, out of these 5 articles I just mentioned in the first clump, what comments do you have?
Well, I know how to pronounce his name. Pete Butts his gig.
That's great.
Pete Butts his gig. So when I write his name, I write it in 3 words, so I know how to pronounce it. Butts his gig. He's a homo.
I knew I shouldn't have brought that article up, but anyway, regarding just the scams, just the hypocrisy, double standards that people always use these terms, regarding everything that's fake, everything that's regarding holding the narrative, to sway public opinion, to manufacture pity, guilt, and ideology, to control every meme, every thinking point, to make everybody a follower, not an independent thinker. Regarding just these articles, don't you feel that the mainstream media and the powers that be are extremely insulting and condescending to the people?
Absolutely. And it's not just the mainstream media. I went to the mailbox and I got some mail, and the local supermarket, I talk about the GDP, the generally dumb public. I have absolute proof that that corporate America thinks we really are GDP. So they sent this flyer, this sale flyer for a local supermarket, and they have different items pictured so you can see what they are and have the price. And then they say in really big letters, half price sale. Okay? And then they define what that means. They say, if the item is $3, you save $1.50 and you'll pay $1.50. So they had to define what half price means. Can you imagine that? They can't just say half price. They have to tell you that half price means if it is originally $3, you take half of that and you save it and you pay the other half. That's first grade math. First grade math. But that's what we're teaching with these news flyers or these sale flyers. So we really are dumb. We really are dumb. No question about it. But I'd like to talk about a little bit more about that article. If you could share with us, flesh out the article about Mayor Pete Butts' gig. What's that all about? I'm serious.
I am. I have read all these articles. It's just that, like when I talk about financial and economic thing, anything, I never get to, there's never enough time to be real thorough, and I got to shortcut everything because of time. But basically it says, Mayor Pete, they don't say Mayor Pete, they say his name, brother-in-law, accuses 2020 candidate of lying about his family for political gain. And basically, brother-in-law is accusing the gay Democratic presidential hopeful of hijacking his family's history for political advantage by crafting a bogus backstory of poverty, homelessness, and homophobia. So basically, he was doing the poor me, I'm a victim thing because I come from a poor family, I don't have a home, and I was surrounded by homophobia. And basically what the article mentions is that he was inundated by death threats, and everybody was a bigot, everybody was a homophobe. And basically, his brother-in-law came out and said that it's not true. He was surrounded by support and love and all this stuff. So, basically, playing the scam game, playing the poor me, I'm a victim game because I'm a homosexual. Vote for me. It's all theater. It's 100% theater, and so. It's that's what a lot of these.
Well, he doesn't need to run with Joe Biden to be in the trifecta of the American presidential candidate. He can do it all by himself. He claimed to be poor. He claims to be a homo, and he's a liar. All he needs now is to be over 35 years old and a natural-born citizen, and he's ready to go. He's got all the qualifications we need to run the corporation, Corporate USA. We'll be right back. Rich Evans with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, one of the articles that you mentioned was about some New York City education officials that were demoted for being white, W-H-I-T-E. I got to tell you, I was demoted for being white back in 1971 when I applied for admission to a university, and they weren't selecting for admission very many whites because they wanted to even up the score and allow blacks to catch up in terms of the numbers. So I was demoted for being white, and I know what that's like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're allowing political correctness to poison us against ourselves, and we can't allow the people, we can't allow ourselves to follow the narrative. That's why we need to read up and research up, because the powers that be are dividing us, not just so we infight and they foment hate, but so they can divide us for the vote. And this is why the little people, the bottom 93%, needs to unify, despite what our skin pigmentation is, our gender, our religion, our sexual orientation, whatever. We have to stop with the rumors, the gossip, the baby talk, and we need to eliminate the separate tiered system of different rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in. Because if we continue to do that, then things are going to get a lot worse, because you can't reward mediocrity and expect not to fall into a law of diminishing returns cycle. And that's what's happening in America. So the next clump of articles, I have 4 articles here, Vince, and that kind of...
Can I just interrupt for a second? Can I just interrupt for a second? I just don't want to leave one of the articles that you talked about. You've mentioned political correctness. I'm going to admit on the air publicly in front of everyone that I am biased. I am. And I think that I express my biases, which would be politically incorrect. So I am not politically correct. I am politically incorrect. So when I see someone who's got this thing in her tongue and she wants to serve me food or wait on me at a restaurant, I am biased against that. And out it comes. And when she says, "May I help you?" I go, "No, you can't help me. You just grossed me out when you open your mouth." I think it's disgusting. So political correctness is unacceptable to me. I am not going to be politically correct. I am not going to say something is nice when it's not nice. Last night I was asked on air, what would happen if I were a customer and I bought a washing machine and dryer from Sears and it was mishandled. The guys didn't strap it down. The guys didn't know how to hook it up. The guys were rough on it, careless with my property, because when you buy a washer and dryer at Sears, you pay for it first. You don't even see your washer and dryer. You pay for it, and then it shows up, during the week. And a couple guys come out, and they look pretty rough, and they're tattooed, and they don't know what they're doing, and they mishandle it. And then comes the survey. How would you rate your experience with your appliance delivery from Sears? Now, would I rate it, 1, 2, 3, 10? How would I rate it? And would I be afraid to rate it the way I really felt? And I said, no, I wouldn't be afraid to rate it the way I really felt. And I would rate these guys a 1. I wouldn't rate them a 0 because no one would look at the 0. They'd say, that guy's just angry. But if it's rated a 1, somebody would read it, and then I would delineate exactly why I rated those thugs masquerading as appliance delivery people from Sears. So that's politically incorrect also, what I just said that I would do. And it's time, and Rich, you are absolutely correct. It's time, it's past time really, that we all start saying it like it really is. And so if you get lousy service, so how was it? Well, it was lousy. Just say it. Say it. And not only was it lousy, it's not worth what you expected me to pay for it. So you expect me to pay full price. It was lousy, so what are we going to do? I'm not paying full price. How would you like 1/4 of what you're asking for it? Because it was lousy. We'll be right back. So, Rich, in that line of thinking, our son went to Aldi and bought a case of pasta noodles. They changed the box, and he thought, well, they just changed the packaging. Well, Mrs. Finelli cooked them up, and they were terrible. So I said, so what do you want to do? She said, well, I'm not going to eat these. These are terrible. So guess what? Case of 12, they're getting 11 of them back. And we're going to bring them back, and we're going to say these are lousy. That's what you need to do, class. You need to stand up, and you need to speak out. Now, does anyone want to bring stuff back? No. But we're going to. We're going to go out of our way. And the more bad products we buy, the fewer we're going to buy from those locations until we stop buying them altogether. That's the way we do things. Rich?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's kind of forced inflation. You know, like when I went over last week, I talked about deflation and inflation. Whether the food is in smaller packaging or lesser quality, less cost to the supplier, but more cost to the people. This is just forced inflation on top of the people. But let me move on, Vince, because I have several clumps of these articles here, and we can continue the discussion. And the second clump, and I just love that term, clump, pardon me. And what we're doing today, folks, we're doing a little bit of a different repertoire, if you will, a little different format. And I'm just going through some articles that I've picked out of the new media over the past 2 days to 2 weeks, if you will. So the next article is Ilhan Omar suggests that Latinos would not be competitive in a merit-based immigration system. Next article, Lawrence Jones says this is regarding to the SAT scores and adversity scores, and he just basically says it's insulting, and I think everybody would agree. And basically what we're talking about here, folks, is when you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, to get a job, to keep a job, it doesn't matter, you're not only insulting the work ethic, the ability, and the intelligence of all these people who are applying for a job because you're giving them a job based on their group, you also degrade and disrespect them. And what happens is when you reward mediocrity for year after year and decade after decade, you never empower a nation. You don't empower a group or an individual. When you lower the bars of standards and expectations, you are making the populace submissive. You're breaking their will. You are eliminating the appreciation, the dignity, and the value of work. And that's exactly where we are in America right now, and that's why our economy is held up by smoke and mirrors and puppet strings. Next article. Twitter suspends researcher who exposed Antifa journalist connections. So basically, if you have the left/Democrat/globalists, and they're hiring mercenaries called Antifa, and the public or a patriotic journalist exposes the connections to the mainstream media, you get suspended, or you get fined, or you go to jail. This is basically what happened during Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, where there's no more rule of law and only rule of the aristocracy. Next article, mask slips. Some actor, Jeffrey Wright, I never heard of him. He's a black man. I just read the article and saw a photo. Makes it clear he basically slipped, and he got all emotional and said that the left obsession with power. Basically, he said when we get the power back, when we win the vote, the Democrats, everybody else better effing duck. So it's, like I said, it's a lot less left-right paradigm, a lot more aristocracy managing and controlling the serfs. In other words, the addiction to power, money, and control is so great with these people that they don't want the bottom 93% of Americans to even have a life. And they will do anything, whether it be violence, whether it be lies, propaganda, false flags, hoaxes. Everything is theater. Everything. And let me remind any new listeners that Micah Brzezinski, not too long ago, I believe she's from MSNBC or CNN. They're both totally fake news, so I don't even know which one. She said, and I'm quoting, the media's job is to control exactly what the people think. Now, if that's not derogatory and condescending, I don't know what is. Vince, what comments do you have on those articles I just mentioned?
Well, I've got some comments on most of them. One of them is you talked about Latinos not being competitive in a merit-based system. Well, it depends on what the system is. So, for example, I hired some masons to put some stone on our house. There's a lot of stone, 220 tons of stone. That's without the concrete. And so I hired these white guys to do it. And it wasn't like I was looking for white guys. They didn't have a gauge that said if you're not white, you don't fit. It wasn't like that at all. I was looking for the best masons I could find. Well, the white guys stopped showing up. So I got them some help. And I brought in this team of Latinos. And I told the white guys, I got great news for you. I got you some help. This other team is going to be working on the house too. And they're going to be putting the siding up, which is stone. And the Latinos were great. They were absolutely fabulous. They loved what they were doing. They were playing music, and it was like a festival. They loved it. So anyway, it depends on what the measurement is. Now, if I were in a game where you throw a ball around, I probably want some guys who are really tall and really agile, and they'd probably be black. So that would now I wouldn't specifically look for them, but I'm pretty sure that's how it would end up. So it depends. It depends on what we're looking for, and people are different. There are different skill sets that people have. I mean, I could get in a lot of trouble, from expanding on that, but I got to tell you that there are certain groups of people who are really good at math and certain groups that aren't so good at math, and there are others who are kind of in the middle. The media's job is to tell us what to think. That's pretty clear. That's pretty clear. Because those of us in the alternative media are being replaced with others who are in the big media. Now, I won't necessarily say mainstream, but I will say bought and paid for media. I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but, there are people like us who talk about things that are wrong against the villagers, police corruption, police abuse, police setting up their own businesses within the protection racket of the badge, the shield. They're shielded from prosecution. They're shielded from being charged with murder when they murder people. They're shielded from being charged with police abuse when they tase people, when they throw them down on the sidewalk, when they grind their faces into the pavement with their knees. They're shielded. We talk about that. But the other team, which is bigger than we are, by far, says, the police are great. We love the police. I guess they don't drive vehicles. I guess they don't get pulled over. I was talking with a friend last night, stopped over, and he has a family member who's in the police department. His son is a policeman. He says his son looks for tag lights that are out. You can call them license plates. You can call them tags. Okay, the lights that illuminate the license plates. He looks for those being out. Who has a license plate light that's out? Pretty much everybody. If you live on a farm, they get dusty, they get dirty, they're hard to reach, to clean, and lots of them are out on the back. So he looks for that. Why? Because that's an excuse for him to pull somebody over. Hey, you got a tag light out, license plate lights out. Hey, mind if I look in your car? Your truck? What else you got in there? You been drinking? Any drugs in there? Is that a knife? Is that a weapon? And that's what they do. So here we are, we're trying to expose these things, and we're being replaced with people who love the police. I don't think they live in the same place that we live in. So I'm not going to be politically correct. I'm going to call it like I see it. When that mayor guy wants to be my president, I'm going to call him out for what he is. Pete Butts' gig. That's the last guy I want to be running CEO, being CEO of corporate United States. Just because he was in the military doesn't mean he knows anything. There are plenty of people who have been in the military. I was at a lunch. I have a friend who was a sniper in Vietnam. He became a peace officer. He was a sergeant. And there was a guy who was with us. The three of us went to lunch. And the other guy had a gun show on the radio. Talked about guns. He was like an expert. He knew everything about guns. And he was telling people all about guns. And so I thought he ought to meet my friend, my trainer, the guy who trained me. And so we're sitting down, and the radio talk show host guy said, so have you ever been in a gunfight as a cop? He said, yeah. How many? 13. 13? You've been in 13 gunfights as a cop? Yeah. How many have you been in? None. So what I'm trying to say, class, I'm giving you some illustrations, real stories of the way it really is. Just because you hear somebody on the radio doesn't mean they are who you think they are. I'm talking about a guy who has a gun show, talks about guns on the radio all the time for years, and he's never been in a gunfight, and he's been a cop. He's also a Marine, the talk show host guy. Now, only 10% of the Marines are in combat. So just because a guy says he is a Marine doesn't mean he ever fought. The guy I'm talking about carried a radio around. So if you listen to him, he's a Marine, he was a cop. You know, you think that, well, heck, he's been in gunfights, he's seen it all. The answer is no. He's a corrupt cop. And that's the real story. So you have to question everything. Everything, including us here at USA Prepares. Use your mind and think. Does it seem reasonable? Does everything else seem reasonable? Rich Scheben, you mentioned the SAT scores, the adversity points, and that it's insulting. I have a friend, he's an instructor here at USA Prepares, and he's a doctor. And I'm not talking about Dr. Shealy, I'm talking about a different instructor. And many years ago, he said to me, he was at the kitchen table, and we were having a cup of coffee, and he said, so what do you call the last place student in medical school? You know, the guy who does the absolute worst. Everybody's better than that guy. What do you call him? Doctor. That's what you call him. You call him doctor. And I really don't want anybody operating on me or treating me who's the last place guy. I really don't. So we all assume that our medical doctor, our dentist, is not that guy. We assume that, you know, they're near the top, if not the top, because we want them to be. And it's worse than insulting that the SAT scores are manipulated based on adversity. So if you had a tougher time growing up, you get bonus points for having a tougher time. I feel bad that people have a tough time. I really do. But that doesn't mean that if I'm an employer and I've got a guy who scores 100 and a guy who scores 40, that I should take the guy who scores 40 because he had a tougher time getting here. That's just the way I feel
That's
about
what they're
it.
doing. They're using skill sets and diversity to divide the American people. And nothing matters anymore. Hard work, effort, proven results, qualifications, nothing matters. The only thing that matters, unfortunately, is what group you're from. Now, Vince, we only have a couple minutes left. Can I do the next clump real quick, and I'll be real brief, because I have so many articles here.
Go to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next, this is going to be a little economy-based, and Chinese and European banks are falling like dominoes. Next article, UK retail sales crash most on record. Deutsche Bank hits fresh record low. Illinois, reckless spending, $45 billion in capital spending binge exposed. So basically, pretty much anything goes. The numbers really aren't as good as they say they are. If they really want to help the American people or the people around the world, all they have to do is lower all the end of the yield curve bonds and have the little people refinance to stay afloat. That would alone save the housing market. But you can tie in student loan, car loans, credit card loans, basically even consolidate corporate and household loans. I mean, we have $14 trillion in outstanding household debt in this country. So if they were to lower, and they say, well, the market does it and the Fed is only controls the short term, you know, I think everything is rigged. Every book is cooked. Every number is fixed. And so if they really wanted to help the little people, they could. I just wanted to share those 4 articles before we go into the break in a matter of seconds. So, Vince, before the break, do you have any comments on our economy and those few articles I just mentioned?
Yeah, I do. You mentioned retail sales are down. Well, I wanted to build a lawnmower blade balancer, one that would be really accurate, better than anything on the market. So I decided to fabricate one, but I thought, well, let me go look and see what eBay has for sale. And so I looked around, and retail sales are down so much that I get an email from eBay a couple days after I just looked, saying, you viewed this item, and now you can save 20%. You can buy it for 20% less than we offered it to you a couple days ago, because we know you looked at it. Additionally, I put some items in a cart. I wanted to buy some nuts and bolts and machine screws, small machine screws, metric and SAE. A couple thousand screws. And they had them in these packages, assorted packages, different group sizes. So I had 4 of them in this cart, and I've been thinking about, do I really want to buy them or not? I don't know. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I didn't decide. Well, I get an email telling me, here's your cart. You've got these things in your cart. You've got these 4 items. Let's get moving. Click that Buy It Now button. So what I'm saying is sell, sell, sell. That's what these guys are doing, because I believe what you said is exactly correct. Retail sales are down. Malls are vacant. Who goes to a mall today? Malls are in the death spiral. They're trying to figure out, wow, we've got these really neat buildings divided up into little compartments. What are we going to do with them? Because people don't go to the mall. Why? Well, that'd be Jeff Bezos. He took care of the malls. So my thoughts on retail. What am I doing? Am I buying most things? No. Am I going to restaurants? No. Is money flowing like crazy? No. Not here at our farm. Money's tight. Money's tight everywhere I look, and with everybody I know. It's tight. People are in financial distress. Everywhere. Everywhere. So don't waste your money. Don't be conned into buying things that you don't want and don't need with money you don't have. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of the USA Prepares. If you heard the top of the hour news, the statement was that New York could be the first state to ban the declawing of cats. The state of New York could be the very first state to ban declawing cats. Now, why is that important? Well, that's the very same place that it's very hard to get a gun in. So they're saying, these New York legislators are saying that, well, we think the cats should be able to protect themselves with their God-given claws. But y'all want to protect yourself with guns, well, we don't think that's so good, especially in New York City. Hypocrisy at its finest. What do you think, Rich?
Well, it's total hypocrisy when you see that sanctuary cities and gun-free zones have the highest amount of murder, the highest murder rate. So it's all politics. It's all, all the wealthy and all these so-called celebrities who are wealthy enough to fly everywhere. They don't have to drive as much, or they have a driver, or they have tinted windows in their fancy cars. They have bodyguards who carry guns. The again, hypocrisies and double standards don't apply to what they say. They're basically all liars. Well, this is why we need practice what you preach laws. And by the way, right now, over the break, I was doing a little surfing on the internet, and Facebook has a naked protest. I don't know what's up with these naked protests. I've never seen so many naked protests over the last few years as I have recently, and I don't know what they're trying to prove. But yeah, we're living in crazy times, Vince. There's no doubt about it, and this is why the little people have to get together and stand for principle. We need to stand for truth. We need to have the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. And probably the most important thing is if somebody has less consequences for their behavior because of what group they're from, then we should get to do it also. And then that's when the people get together and say, okay, we need these laws not just for what group you're in, what skin pigmentation, what gender, what sexual orientation, but we need laws to apply to everybody. And we don't have that, Vince.
Well, I've noticed that not everybody is equal. Now, I'm going to give you an example. So I was in the shop, our automotive shop, yesterday, and I said to our son, "What's with this wrench, this 10-millimeter wrench? I don't recognize it. I've never seen it before. It was black, and it was a brand that we don't buy. We're not boycotting. It's just we've never bought this particular brand of wrench." And he said, "I found it in the road." Okay. He said, "I find every time I go out on my four-wheeler, I go down the road, I find all kinds of tools in the road." Okay. Well, maybe we should go out there more often. Well, the interesting thing is people are so careless that wrenches fall out of their trucks. Now, how is that possible? How is it possible that we find wrenches and ratchets, all kinds of things, chains? I mean, the list is pretty long. We find these things in the road, on our dirt road. Why? Why are wrenches falling out of vehicles? Why are tools falling out of vehicles? Because people are careless. Not everybody is the same. So their stupidity is our gain. Now, is it my responsibility to go up and down the road looking for who dropped these wrenches? I'm not going to do it. If someone says to me, "Hey, did you see a wrench? It looks like this," I'll go, "Yeah." Is it yours? I mean, that's a strange example, but that's the kind of stuff that's happening. Nuts, bolts, screws, tools. How's that happen? Because of carelessness and stupidity. And that's the reason why we're going down, because of our individual stupidity. Rich, please continue with your articles.
All right, sounds good. All right, what we're doing today, folks, for those of you who didn't listen to the first hour, we're just doing a different protocol, and I put aside a few articles, saved them. Oh, they could be 2 days old, 2 weeks old, and to show you where we're going as a country, which is really unrecognizable for America. So the next group or clump of articles, I like that word, clump. Here's the first one for the second hour, and that is Democrat who ran for Congress says she hates white people and hates America. Her name was, and I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, Sarah Rayo, and it's spelled Sairaoraoe, her last name. Next article in this clump is hate agents blacklist kept at Facebook, and that includes Candace Owens. Now, I know I stick up for Candace Owens a lot. She really deserves it. She doesn't need anybody to speak for her because she can destroy anybody in a debate, and she basically shredded Congress a couple months ago when she was there. But I do have to paraphrase some of the things that she says. First of all, what people, the left, the Democrats, the globalists hate about Candace Owens is that she has two qualities that the left absolutely despises because they don't know how to deal with it, and that's courage and intelligence. And I'm going to paraphrase some of the things she says, but she started out being very humble, being very gracious, because she said how she was a lefty Democrat, and she fell for their propagandas, their lies, their tools of division. And she has made it very clear through her intelligence, where she decided to read and research up, that she is not going to be a victim because she's a woman. She is not going to be a victim because she's black. Same thing that millions of black and female Americans are stepping up to the podium and saying these days. Ben Carson, he came to Northwest Montana several years ago. He says, I hate political correctness. Right after that, I'm paraphrasing what he said, is when you're politically correct, you turn minorities into victims. So we can't lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job and expect a real, authentic, credible, legitimate economy to thrive without rigged numbers and cooked books. It just can't happen. And, of course, she has the guts and the courage to say the truth, to speak up, going back to Candace Owens now again, and say it like it is. And basically that's what we're talking about today. And, by the way, these articles, folks, I'm not making them up. These articles are in, they're published articles in the public domain. Next article, poll. Me Too movement has made more men fearing mentoring women. Now, the Kavanaugh effect has created a situation in America where different companies, even industries, are saying things like, I'm going to read some quotes from Wall Street, saying no more dinners with female colleagues. Don't sit next to them on flights. Don't book hotel rooms. If you do book hotel rooms, do it on different floors. Avoid one-on-one meetings. In fact, as a wealth advisor put it, just hiring women these days is an unknown risk. What if she takes something the wrong way? And I can go on and on. And this is despite countless females coming forward over the years with many, many rape hoaxes, which we've discussed on this show in detail. So this, as you can see, most of these things is under the category or subsets of political correctness. Political correctness is not just affirmative action and quotas, folks. Political correctness has thousands of subsets. And basically it's meant to distort, it's meant to sway public opinion, manufacture perception, pity, guilt, even manufacture ideology. And they use race, gender, sex, religion, sexual orientation, everything, in all to race bait and skin pigmentation bait, basically to insult, degrade, and disrespect the people. So there's more hate and more division. And this way the elite can make a cover for their scams when there's more people fighting against each other. This way they can clog up the news channels as well. Next article, Christian Gillibrand blames gender bias for the reason she's polling at 0. You know, again, this is a subset of political correctness. You know, when you start blaming, when your group demands to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, and then you say, well, I'm not competing, my work is suboptimal, I'm polling at 0, I can't do the job. You're destroying your own country with mediocrity. Again, you turn a whole nation into the law of diminishing returns. You don't empower any nation or any group by lowering the bars of standards and expectations. And this is happening more and more on an everyday basis. I can't even go through the new media anymore without reading stories like this. It's totally divide and conquer. Because when you think about, folks, all these politically correct buzzwords that the elite use, like equality, fairness, tolerance, diversity, prosperity, you do what we say and all this will happen. It's the opposite that's happening. The middle class is being destroyed. The little guy can barely, never mind, they're not thinking about becoming wealthy. They're thinking about surviving. And this is these are all divide and conquer strategies. We have to be merit-based. We have to be based on certain standards for getting a job. And if everything is going to be based with a separate tiered system of different rules, laws, and accountabilities based on what group you're in, one set of rules for the Democrats, one set of rules for the aristocracy, one set of rules for skin pigmentation, for sexual orientation, for gender, etc. We can't do that. We can't survive as a nation with these circumstances. We need to raise the bars of standards and criteria, not lower them. Vince, do you have any comments on this last?
Yeah, I do, but it's kind of a tangent. I've noticed recently, over the last several years, that I see things happening and I try to give young people advice. I'm talking about, 18 to 25-year-olds. Try to give them advice, not family members, people outside the family, but friends of the family. And they get so annoyed that they won't come back to our house because I give them advice on things that they could do and make things better for themselves. They won't do it, and they don't want to hear any more of it. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. So, Rich, what I was saying is it dovetails with what you were saying about traveling with members of the opposite sex on business travel. Well, I found that when I gave advice to young people, it's not even young people, it's pretty much everybody. They don't want to hear it. I know things that could make their situation better. And I tried in the past to tell them. But they don't want to hear it, and then they get annoyed with me. So now I don't give advice. Because why should I? Why should I get people annoyed with me that I'm trying to help? So I think the situation's bigger than what you're talking about. It's people take things the wrong way. People don't know how to communicate anymore. To prove that, all you have to do is look at any comment section of any broadcaster. Just look at the comment section. They're cryptic. They're unintelligible. They're bizarre. They come from real strange perspectives. And so when you're trying to help people and they can't even communicate, how easy is it for them to take it the wrong way? Very easy. And that's what they do. We are failing so fast. I just can't believe it. It's almost impossible to talk to people today because they're not smart enough to have a conversation. The millennials are lost. I don't think we can fix it for most of them. There are a few of them that get it, but not too many. If I were a millennial today, I would not appreciate it. How does a millennial find that ideal mate? How does that millennial find someone who thinks the way he does or she does? How does a millennial find anyone of the opposite sex who is not me first? Millennials believe that they deserve to be happy. They deserve things they haven't worked for. They think that's the way it should be. How would you find that ideal person in your life who has that attitude? I'm first. We're going to do it my way. all the time. Or it's the highway. Do it my way or take a hike. That's what the millennials are experiencing with each other. They can't have conversations. They text each other. They don't even call each other. They don't sit down and talk. They do things separately. Millennials who date don't even know each other. That's the road we're heading down. And Rich, what you said about travel, that's just the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Sorry, we just...
Did I lose you, Rich?
Yep, I got him right back.
Okay. Okay, Rich, we just lost you.
Yeah, I'm back now, Vince. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I was saying is...
what you were saying before I got disconnected?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Please do.
First of all, when you talk about advice, especially the young people, they need to realize that so many of them are proponents of socialism. Basically, that means no independence. That means that they're always going to be told what to do, what to say, what not to say, how to think, when, and who to do it with. Well, you know what? We really need legislation for a mentor-protege relationship where the older people can teach the younger people. And the reason why the millennials are angry, Vince, is because they went to school, they paid a fortune for school, they thought they were going to learn something, and the professors basically tell them that they need to be socially and politically indoctrinated, and all they really need to do is to scream and yell and chant and be violent and not use objective facts to sell the malarkey that they're being taught in schools. So when you go there and you spend all this money, where 90% of the degrees are worthless, and you come out of school and you're not making good money because we've outsourced all of our companies and good jobs, they're angry. And I don't blame them in that context.
I agree with that. And it's our fault. It's the greed of the baby boomers who've destroyed the opportunities that the millennials could have had. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us. Rich, when I was about 12 years old, I lived in a neighborhood, and I built a go-kart. I took a 1x12 shelf board, 5 feet long, and a 3/4 horsepower Briggs & Stratton lawnmower engine. And I bought some wheels, and I made a foot steering system where I'd literally steer with your feet. I had a rope that you'd hold on, but you'd literally steer to the left or right with your feet. And it was all made out of wood, except for the axles. And I fabricated a pulley from a washing machine to the wheels. And I didn't have a clutch, so I literally had to start this thing with the rear wheels raised off the ground, get the engine running, and then kind of rock it so that it would fall off the block, and off I'd go. And the brake was simply a drag, a piece of oak that I'd pull up, and it would drag on the ground and slow it down. So if I wanted to stop, I'd have to shut the engine off. And one of the neighbors who lived down the road saw me. And I'd be riding this go-kart all over the neighborhood. It was absolutely, totally illegal. But, back then the parents thought, there's something to this, and the youngsters are learning to do things. And they never said, let's call the police. We didn't have 911. And so it was great. Well, one of the neighbors worked for a company called Bendix. And I think he was a salesperson. But he lived way down the far end of the neighborhood. And he came over one day. And he said, I got a suggestion for you. I've been watching you have a tough time with the throttle on that thing, and you'd pull on this little piece of string, and you'd go faster or slower, and you'd have to reach around backward, steer while you're going forward. And he said, I think this might help you. So he handed me some tubing, nylon tubing, and some thin wires like guitar strings that could go through it. And he said, you can probably use this to fabricate something that might be a little better for your throttle. So I'd have a hand throttle that I wouldn't have to reach around to control the engine speed. Now, what I'm talking about is advice. I thought that was great. And I still remember the guy's name. His name was Paul Brown. And Paul Brown was a wonderful guy. I didn't see him all the time. He didn't come over all the time. He just saw me and he thought he could help. It was great advice. Now, he didn't tell me exactly how to do it. He just put me on the right path. Now, probably what I do today in our automotive shop at the farm probably has something to do with Paul Brown bringing a little handful of tubing and guitar string type wire. And that's advice. But the millennials don't seem to think of it like that. They get frosted and offended. It's nuts. The reason I like advice is because I look up to people who know more than I do. And when they can show me a better way, I don't go, hey, I'm not interested in a better way. I'm delighted and thankful. And I remember some of my great mentors and great teachers. And these are people who just volunteered information. Hey, Vinny, let me show you the way I do it. You might like the way I do it. And almost all the time, I liked the way they did it better than the way that I did it. Because their way was a little less hard. Their way worked a little bit better. Kind of like when you're using a drill and someone says, you know what? Those drill bits will last a little longer. Actually, they'll last a lot longer if you put a little bit of oil on them. It cools the tip, and you don't burn out the drills when you're drilling through metal. Each time you drill, you burn up a drill bit. But if you put oil on them and you go slowly and you cool off the tips, they'll last years and years and years, maybe like 30 or 40 years, like mine have. How did I learn that? Somebody told me. So do I hate that guy for giving me good advice? Of course not. I remember that person dearly. But the millennials, too many of them, don't seem to think that advice and counsel is a good thing. They take offense at it. So here we are. So do I volunteer to help millennials very much? Nah, not so much. Why? Because almost universally they get mad at me. Now, I'm not talking about our engineers. I really like our engineers at GCN and RBN. They seem to appreciate advice and counsel because they want to do better. They want to make their lives better every way they can. Not that they're bad. It's just that they want to improve. And that's what I want to do. No matter what it is, I want to make it better. If I buy a printer, a laser printer, I'm okay with that. I pick the best one, the best value. But when it comes time for those toner cartridges to be replaced, I want to figure out a better way of doing it. Can I just buy some powder, some toner powder? Can I drill a hole in the case? Maybe drill a hole with a hot tool, heat it up with a torch, poke a hole in it, pour the powder in it, put a piece of tape over it. Will that work? Hey, it works. It's a better way to do it rather than spending $79 for a toner cartridge. I appreciate advice and counsel. I really do. And the proof is when I talk to someone for the first time who listens to the broadcast, who's either a student or an instructor to be, I always ask the same question. What can we do to make it better? What can I do to make the broadcast better? I solicit advice. And that's something that's wrong with too many people. Not only don't they solicit advice and counsel, they don't want to hear it. Rich?
Well, too many people say they love technology and they love experiences. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that an app will not make your life better. It's going to make it work because of the imbalance between nature and technology. Now, if you want experiences and you want technology, my suggestion would be to look at buying some land and live off the grid. Because when you hear an interview and people say, why are you working? I'd say 50% of the time, the first sentence out of most people's mouth is, well, I have to put food on the table. Well, if you had some land and you lived off grid, you can actually go out and grow your own food. That's just one example. Now, a lot of these young people, they don't want to listen, but they're going to be forced to listen because they've been duped, they've been used. The left, the Democrats, are the true Nazis. They're the true communist socialist party. They are the authoritarians. They are into tyranny, dictatorships, totalitarianism, fascism. Now, when you ask who wants to control the media and who hates citizen journalists, is it the left or the right? It's obviously the left. We've been duped. In other words, you've been used, you've been conned, you've been played. Okay, who wants to control the police and let Antifa go wild? Is it the left or the right? It's the left. Who wants no due process? Is it the left or the right? It's the left. Who wants government schools to control curriculum and not have parents have a say? Who's anti-homeschool? Is it the left or the right? It's the left. Who is a proponent of private property invasion by the police? Is it the left or the right? It's the left. Who's into strip searches and like some of the complaints from TSA? Is it the left or the right? It's the left. How about the courts, the lawyers and judges? Who sold out the people for so-called justice? It's the left. Who's a proponent of voter fraud, election fraud, people voting twice, dead people voting cross borders, letting illegal immigrants vote? Is it the left or the right? It's the left. So for you young people or anybody who's voting for the so-called Democrats, if you are not convinced that they are not only have been hijacked by the globalist party, you're not going to have your say. So everything that Vince is saying, that you're angry because somebody cares about you and wants to mentor you and give you a little advice to make your life a little better, a little easier, a little more rewarding, maybe a little more adventurous, maybe a little more exciting. Well, the direction that we're going, folks, towards socialism, with all these fake and rigged numbers where work doesn't even have any appreciation, dignity, or value anymore because you get a job based on what group you're in lieu of hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications. The direction that we're going is if you hate people telling you things, if you hate people telling you what to do, if you hate people sharing information with you and trying to care about you, you are really going to hate your life because we're getting to the point where freedom, liberty, and everything to do with America, traditions, heritage, and culture has been sold out to the highest bidder. And you're not going to have a say. Vince, I know we're getting short on time. If it's okay with you, I'll hit up a few more articles. And I'm just going to do a double batch here real quick, and then feel free to comment after that because of time constraints. Next article, loophole in California allows citizens to vote twice. There you go. Maxine Waters paid her daughter $50,000 from campaign funds. New Strzok page email shows FBI leadership, including FBI top lawyer James Baker, rushed to turn over FBI email investigation documents to Hillary Clinton just before the election. Next article. College kicked out of an athletic conference for winning too much. Next article. Not just Ukraine. Biden has a serious China problem because of Hunter, his son, exposes a $1 billion deal. Next article. Biden's Second Amendment does not say you're entitled to own a gun. Now, this is a semantic thing. I have the pocket Constitution right in front of me. The short answer to Amendment 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So what they're doing is they're attacking language. They're making politically correct buzzwords. They're changing definitions. They're basically doing professional wordsmithing with redefining semantics, and that's the gimmicks behind what the left is doing. Not the right, the left. Now, are there rhinos on the right who have been bought and paid for and who sold out, who might be blackmailed because they've laundered money or pedophilia or done some crime, absolutely, there's rhinos on the right. But this is why the little people needs to stand up and stand for principle and speak up. Next article. Obama orchestrated the Clinton email cover-up. Next article. Spying began months before the FISA warrants. Next article. FBI uncovers Islamic terror training camp in Alabama. Folks, I'm not making up any of these articles. They just don't get discussed on the mainstream media because they don't hold the narrative. Vince?
Yeah, we'll be right back with Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com. Offgridmontana.com. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, a couple quick comments. You mentioned homeschooling. We have homeschooled all of our children. And here's the quote. If you love your children, homeschool them. Get them out of the public training camp because they will become dumber by the second. You can quote me on that. And I really believe that's true. Because they'll learn all kinds of things. Our daughter went to the university at age 14. She was the youngest student to attend the university. She was a non-matriculated student, meaning she just took classes because they wouldn't allow her entrance. So she took class after class after class, and pretty soon they said, we can't let you take any more classes, and she kept taking classes. Pretty soon, next thing you know, she was receiving her degree before she had a high school diploma, and they made her go take her GED so she could have her GED in order to graduate the university level. Yeah. So she studied for one day and passed the GED. She was way prepared for the GED. That was real simple. So if you love your children, get them out of the public training camp and homeschool them. Second comment, I seek advice all the time. All the time. And what I do is I will go to the internet. Let's say I want to build something. I will go to the internet and I'll look at images. How did other people attempt to solve what I'm attempting to solve? What did they do? What was their design? Think of it like, okay, I'm trying to build a solar array. I already built it. But when I was trying to build it, I thought I drew up my own designs, paper and pencil. And I thought, let me see what other people have done. I looked at their designs. I didn't like them I didn't like them very much. So I took the best designs I could find and I improved on them. And I bought all the equipment to do it ourselves. So I engineered it based on the best designs I could find, and I improved on them by far. And you can too. So what I'm saying is, I seek advice all the time. But sometimes the advice is not verbal. Sometimes it's not in person. Sometimes it's just going to a YouTube video, how did they do it? Or looking at images, how did they do it? So I am always seeking advice. And I'm not embarrassed to seek advice. Because whatever I'm trying to do, somebody probably has tried to do it before. So why let all that effort go to waste? Now, they may not have done it to my standards or the optimal solution for me, but they've done something. So that's my take on advice, counsel, and homeschooling. Back to you, Rich Scheben.
Well, Vince, I think everybody can learn something from anyone. And everybody has niches, everybody has skill sets, everybody has interests and hobbies. And I ask questions as often as I get asked questions. I have friends who are very, very poor, and I have friends who are millionaires. And everybody has different tidbits of information that we could all glean. Now, you mentioned that basically government schools make you dumber versus homeschooling, and that's obviously the case. But the scariest part about the government school system is that today's youth are being cultivated and groomed to be followers and not thinkers. And this is why we always say on usaprepares.com that you need to read up and research up and speak up, hopefully in that order. And this way you can see the distortions, the distractions, and you can mostly see how you've been force-fed a Marxist, Alinsky, Frankfurt School, Cloward and Piven, Communist Manifesto sandwich. And if you even read some major excerpts from these publications, you will see how they are making the populace drunk on the Kool-Aid of political correctness. And group identity politics, austerity, whatever you want to call it, sets the stage for government interventions, confiscation, redistribution of wealth from the little people to the wealthy, and basically creates a loss of individual rights. So for those of you, especially the millennials, who don't like to be told what to do and what to say and how to think, you just keep voting for socialism, and you're not going to have any freedom, any liberty, any individualism. You'll have no life. And when you look at some of the aristocracy and you read into their plans of action, like John D. Rockefeller, he says competition is sin. Basically, no competition means that you can't use hard work, effort, proven results, qualifications to better your life. And that's where we're heading.
Rich, you said something really, really important. We're grooming children in the public training camp to be followers. Here's the proof. Raise your hand if you want to say something. Or what happens? The children say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" My question is, I don't know, can you? Can you go to the bathroom? You mean, may I go? Of course you may. And get there soon. Rich Scheben, thanks so much for being with us.
Always a pleasure, man.
Bye-bye.